We're really honored to have you at this third roundtable of the year. This time the theme is environment and recycling work in Fiji. Sorry, my sound is not very good. Please feel free to use your phones during this event. If you want to comment the discussions on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can use the hashtag #FriendsInFiji, so we can share it after on our accounts. Thank you very much, and I will leave the floor to the ambassador, Monsieur François Xavier.
So, Pudavinaka, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome you today as the residents of France. And first of all, to express my thanks, interest in the theme of this roundtable discussion. This is the third roundtable that we are organizing here at the residence. The first one was about the ocean, as a follow-up of the One Ocean Summit. And the second one was about the gender issue, gender equality issue, here in Fiji. All of you here today, panelists and guests, have responded because this subject we are dealing with is indeed a subject that concerns you and all of us, and which you work, or for which you are involved. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know, we have to live with climate change in two respects. We are already experiencing the consequences of climate disruption with great force and unprecedented acceleration. We therefore have to reorganize all our habits to reduce our emissions. From the very first days of President Emmanuel Macron's terms of office, the climate has been at the top of the presidential agenda and has remained there ever since. In 2017, the President adopted the goal of carbon neutrality in 2050. It means not emitting more greenhouse gases than the Earth can absorb. By 2019, we have reached our European emission reduction target. But the risk of climate change and biodiversity loss know no border. To be effective, our action can only be collective. On the international scene, we have known the time of awareness, then our joint commitment. French diplomacy has played a decisive role in this last point, as it has contributed to the formation of coalitions of actors, especially by integrating actors from the private sector, finance, and civil society. Today, it is time for action. So when some states have taken a stand against the imperative of ecological transition, France has shown itself to be equal to its international responsibilities by preserving the collective dynamic. And France intervenes in the Pacific via the Agence Française de Développement, the French public agency that implements France's development and international solidarity policies. As the only European development agency present here in the Pacific, we have the regional strategy focusing on the challenges of climate change, green finance, biodiversity conservation, and the ocean we share directly resonates with the challenges of the Blue Pacific. The development of these regional activities is aimed at the strengthened and long-term partnership with the Pacific Island states and territories, directly, but also through the Pacific Community, SPC, the Pacific Regional Environment Program, SPREP, and the Pacific Islands Forum, the INF. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Fiji is obviously the region's privileged partner. EFD operates in Fiji through regional projects in response to shared climate change and biodiversity issues and to develop joint solutions. And here I would like to acknowledge the importance and the significance of a Kiriwa initiative, which is being held by AFD with a lot of stakeholders. Here, locally, how we can translate our speeches, our words into deeds. And here is talk about Suva and the French embassy in Suva. I would like to mention the Green Embassy label that was awarded to us by the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs. What is it about? Launched in 2015 in the run-up of the COP21, the Green Embassy program is an ambitious project born of the desire of the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs to commit fully to the energy and ecological transition. It is a global and progressive approach to reducing the environmental footprint of French diplomatic representations abroad. A Green Embassy is an embassy that has undertaken a project to reduce its environmental footprint and has sent the ministry in Paris an initial diagnosis and an action plan to reduce it. By joining the charter, volunteer embassies affirm their commitment to act on a daily basis and in their immediate environment to protect the planet. Currently, nearly 80 French diplomatic missions have joined the initiative worldwide. Cooperation, exchange of good practices, implementation of concrete projects, and promotion of the many actions carried out by French embassies as the objectives of this network. In such a way, on a daily basis, each embassy agrees to be an agent of change by taking on a certain number of sustainable development objectives, particularly in terms of awareness, mobility, green management, waste sorting and recycling, biodiversity, renewable energies, rain harvesting, to give you some examples, and so on. In Suva, for example, we have set up selective waste sorting at the embassy, but also here in this residence. We have adopted eco-responsible gesture in the office, reduction of paper consumption, electricity consumption, and we are also working on a greenhouse installed at the residence here, which will be seen by young Fijian students to raise their awareness not only of the importance of respecting the environment, but also of the importance of healthy eating, which will be, by the way, the topic of the next roundtable early December. Thanks to Laurence. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Pacific Recycling Foundation, World Bank, our sponsor, and the government of New Caledonia, another sponsor, for supporting and contributing immensely to this event. So now I will give the floor to our panelists and our moderator, who I greet and thank for their presence. I hope to learn as much as possible from this sequence on this theme, which not only concerns all of us, but also, and above all, concerns future generations. Thank you, and Vinaka Vakalifu.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will now pass the mic to our moderator, Mr. Paula from IUCN, and I now declare the official opening of the roundtable. Over to you, Paula.
Thank you, Vishal. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, before we continue, just once again, I would like to acknowledge our sponsors and those that are partnering with us in this roundtable discussion. Thank you, Your Excellency, for availing the residence this afternoon for us to be able to take part in this very important participatory event, roundtable discussion this afternoon. You may be aware of what our topic of discussion is, but it is the struggles in recycling activism and environmental activism as well this afternoon. That is our topic. How we're going to proceed with this, there are four segments to this roundtable discussion. Don't have much time. I calculate that we have about 80 minutes. So that is basically about 20 minutes each of the segment. We have 5 panelists here, so we will allocate about 4 or 5 minutes each. So we will have to try and get as much as we can in those 45 minutes. So before we continue, I have the pleasure of introducing our fabulous panelists this afternoon. Starting off with Kavnil. To my right, Mr. Kavnil Lal is the Principal Environment Officer at the Department of Environment. He heads the Waste Management and Pollution Control Unit since December 2021. Prior to that, he was with the Department of Environment at the Northern Division. So his coverage is quite broad. And now he's based here in Suva as well. He is a passionate environmentalist with a vision to improve waste management in the country. Welcome, Kavnil, to the roundtable discussion. To my left, Suzanne Turaganiwai. She is a marine debris activist. Suzanne is a marine debris activist who has been heavily involved in the ocean advocacy space for the past year. She has merged her backgrounds in marine science and graphic design to creatively communicate and advocate for a cleaner ocean. Her Instagram page, Benu Niwai Tui, that is in Fijian, Benu Niwai Tui, right? Documents the various marine debris often needed and washed up along the Suva coastlines. She is also the co-founder of the Pacific Ocean Leader Youth Project, POLYP, P-O-L-Y-P. Suzanne and the team are adamant on merging creative arts and the science to address waste management and plastic pollution issues in Fiji while empowering youth to become better ocean stewards. Welcome, Suzanne, to the panel this afternoon. And further to my left, Excellency, also welcome you, Ambassador Solomon. He's the Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Development Forum, PIDF, since October 2019. Ambassador Mara began his career in May 1989 as a graduate trainee at the Ministry of Home Affairs and later in the Prime Minister's Office and Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well. Over the years, Ambassador Mara rose through the diplomatic ranks to serve as Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 2009 to 2011, High Commissioner to the United Kingdom 2011-2015, and Ambassador to the United States of America from 2015 to 2019. Welcome, Ambassador, this afternoon. Further on, let me welcome the young lady from Rotuma on my right. Jai Narayan College student and head of the Rock Ambassador Program. Welcome, Hefuhelava Kamaile. 18-year-old Hefuhelava Kamaile is an eager and enthusiastic student who is driven to lead the one-year recycling on the go program that we are currently implementing with Pacific Recycling Foundation. She is currently a senior pure science student at Jai Narayan College and is the head of the 24 ambassadors that are currently engaged at the Jai Narayan College. She is an environmental activist enthusiast in school and identifies and implements activities, values based on environmental programs within her school, within the WRFL activities and the PRF network. Under her leadership, the school is able to work towards promoting the participation of students in learning to carry out proper waste disposal in creating a sustainable environment. She's very inquisitive, has a sense of assertiveness with her about recycling and waste management, and that is what is prompting her to become an ambassador. And I probably think that's why she's here as well. She's raised her hand and she's here with us. Welcome again, Hefuhelava Kamaile, this afternoon. And last but not least, my good friend, Mr. Amitesh Deo, is the Director of Waste Recycling Fiji Limited and also one of the founders of the Pacific Recycling Foundation. Amitesh has been in the recycling and waste management space for over 17 years. He's currently the Director CEO of WRFL PT Limited, Fiji's only streamlined recycling company that deals with all sorts of recyclables. Under his leadership, He has been able to steer WRFL through political upheavals, cyclones, and very recently the global COVID-19 pandemic. Amitesh also, like I said, founded the Pacific Recycling Foundation. The function is to provide support to collection pillars of recycling. They were formerly known as waste pickers. Now they're called CPRs. If you forget their name, remember first aid, CPR. Formerly known as informal waste pickers, in the work they do, as well as to ensure that they are recognized for their efforts. So that is a brief introduction on our panelists this afternoon. I think that took much of our time. And now let's move on to our segments. Like I've mentioned, please, panelists, let's keep our comments to within 4 to 5 minutes. As for the audience, I'm not forgetting you. We will have a question and answer session for you at around 4:45. So please jot down those questions that you're so enthusiastic to ask us and the panelists as well. So 4:45, I will let you take the floor and ask your questions. Okay, so let's get this show on the road, panelists. Our first segment is, the question is, please, can each of the panelists, I will start off with Kavnil to my right. Kavnil, can you talk about your views on the need for, active participation in the recycling and waste management space? Kavnil, 4 to 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. I'll keep that in mind, 4 to 5 minutes. His Excellency, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, those that are in person and those that are joining through virtual platforms, very good afternoon. And thank you for this opportunity and privilege to be representing the Department of Environment at this roundtable. And to the question for this segment, waste management, of course, in itself is a challenge, it's an issue everywhere. And that needs addressing. And is one of those driving factors, when it comes to the stresses on the environment. And as I mentioned, recycling in itself is a solution. And there are several other solutions in itself, that are existing or are in practice to address waste management. If you look at the waste hierarchy, of course, in itself, it presents so many opportunities to address waste management. But stick to recycling. And of course, in any kind of initiative, and especially if it's an issue, it's the stressor, you need active participation from everybody, involvement from everybody, from top to bottom, and then only it can be a success. Because if you work in silos, you work individually, you will not have the same kind of outcome, you won't have the same kind of result that you expect, and especially with waste management, it's challenging itself, a big issue. You need coordination, you need movement, to address waste management. And like I said, recycling in itself is one of those challenges. Like all stakeholders, we're talking about participation, from government to non-government, the CSOs, schools, youth groups, young and old, children, everybody around, all across should be a part of this, right from when the things are jotted down from the first day and going into implementation and so forth. Also, there needs to be sort of a behavioral change when it comes to bringing about these changes, because for long, the idea, the mindset that we have had is, we have viewed waste and recyclables as something that does not have much value, or is just a waste. I think that behavior, that mindset needs to change, and to change and see waste and recyclables as a resource. And then, this movement can, you can propagate and move on with this kind of movement, with this behavioral change, with this mindset. And like I said, if you continue to have that kind of mindset of view waste and recyclables as only waste that needs to end up in the landfill, and is not of something that can be put to good use or cannot be upcycled, then we are in trouble. We are not heading in the right direction, I guess. So it's very important that we start with that kind of mindset. We think about that behavioral change and see recyclables as a resource, something that is of value, and of course that will help again in return addressing the waste management issues that we are having. And then there needs to be a behavioral change also in terms of moving away from a society that is sort of a throwaway society, that as we are labeled most of the time. Using resources only once, and not thinking what happens after. So we need to move away from that kind of mindset, from a throwaway society to something, or towards a more secular economy approach in terms of our consumption. We need to consider, relook at or revisit our consumption patterns, and how we go about utilizing resources. So that needs to change as well, our consumption patterns, and moving away from just discarding after a single use. And while when speaking about single use items, if there are items that cannot be recycled, sometimes back I was asked this question, if I could in a minute or so identify 5 items that cannot be recycled. And if you identify those items that cannot be recycled at all, so I think in the first place this should not be manufactured at all. Should not be brought into the whole loop, and for a single use. We should look at alternatives that have a use after its first use is served. So that's my view, take on that, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Kavnil. Now to you, young lady. As head of the Rogue Ambassadors, and you might refer to yourself as an activist as well in the recycling space. What are your views within the school on the active participation within this space recycling? It's 4 minutes. I see that you have a book full of notes there.
Alright. Okay, so any place where people live or work will produce waste, including schools, especially if we live in a use and throwaway world where there has been a change in people's behavior due to consumerism, as he has mentioned earlier. I shall highlight the need for active participation in the recycling or waste management space with about 3 pointers. Throughout the year, these 3 pointers for the need for active participation in the recycling and waste management space had been educational, environmental education. Secondly would be for nature, how it nurtures and instills passion for the environment. And lastly would be that it educates the future advocates. So in regards to environmental education, it was a process that allowed majority of the individuals to explore environmental issues, engage in problem solving, and take action to improve the environment. In our case, which had been proper waste disposal. Students have been encouraged to research, investigate how and why things happen, and form their own opinions on complex issues rather than just being told information. Environmental education, as we have learned throughout the year, it had promoted critical and creative thinking skills and inspired kids to become more engaged, to understand why the environment is important, and provides them with the building blocks to live eco-friendly and sustainable lives. For instance, would be the recent coastal cleanup campaign that had been organized, whereby we had been coupled with instructors to talk about microplastics being the most type of plastics to take long to degrade. And whereby we had created artwork using all the resources, the waste that we had found along the beach. In our case, where we had discussed this project of creating artwork was like one man's trash is another man's treasure. On to my point, whereby nature nurtures and instills passion for the environment would be for we kids living in a tech-savvy environment where we are always glued to our phones. The cleanup campaign had allowed us freedom to go out and be ourselves. Spending time outside had made us care more about the environment, and it had made us want to spend more time outside. It had a very profound impact on our mental and physical health. The cleanup campaign offered students the freedom to be kids, exploring, running, shouting and laughing, and allowed kids to take reason, discover things, question, and experiment. The self-expression is invaluable to the development and allowed to discover oneself while interacting with the natural surrounding. Furthermore, about educating the next generation of environmental educates, it's clear now that climate change will continue its disastrous effects unless we do our part to live more sustainable and environmentally friendly lives. Climate change requires a long-term solution and it won't be fixed overnight. The abundance of educational resources available online makes it easier than ever to get your kids more involved with the environment. So to my view on the need for active participation of the environment, students, they make up an important percentage of the young and educated population, and therefore they should be the ones setting up the future trends far as environmental protection is concerned. Students help in educating their colleagues and other categories of the population about environmental behaviors and could act as agents of change in both their homes and future jobs. Due to the fact that students will be the ones who hold key positions in society, they will be able to contribute to their adoption of sustainable strategies that will lead to the production of finite resources and of the environment, and to putting an end to climate change, as well as contributing to proper waste management and disposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Hefuhelava. That is an interesting perspective, not only collecting recyclables, but going out to the environment and enjoying nature. Isn't that what you said? That's from the perspective of a young school student. And now we move on to youth, the future of tomorrow, if I might say so. Suzanne, your views on the need for activism in this space, in the recycling and waste management space.
Thank you, everyone. So my views on the active participation in waste management and recycling, it is very important. As a person that's part of the group that's working on the ground to collect rubbish and see what's washing in onto the shores, and every day we see the same things, every day we see the same items on the same beach, and it's very important to be thinking about what's happening after this, but it's also important, as Kavnil had mentioned, to be thinking about the production of plastic, like how much plastic is actually being put out into the environment, how much plastics we're using in the environment, in our homes, in our communities, in our societies, and our young people, I guess, are the creatives and the activists, are the passionate people that will step into the foreground of what we will be doing in this recycling and waste space. Recycling, and even what we're doing with upcycling the waste, that's one part of the solution, as Kavnil had mentioned. I guess from my perspective as a youth activist, we see the problem. We are the individuals walking, talking for a cleaner environment, and we need more help. We need more participation from other young people and other groups across the different levels of society that can help us, that can walk with us and talk with us as well. The different backgrounds of the young people that come in, that work with us as well, they don't understand why this type of rubbish is coming in, washing. They're just expecting takeaway bags and plastic cutlery and spoons and forks. But then we have the shoes coming in, the clothes bags, the lighters, and these other plastic items products you use in your homes, and you wonder why it's the focus would just be on the straws or the plastic bags, but there's so much more that we are using in our lives. So there should be a better look at what we are using in our homes, in our schools, in our workplace, how we can minimize that so that we can just stop the problem. Then of the dam, as they had mentioned in February in Nairobi. That's my views, is that young people are at the forefront. We are at the forefront, and it's important that we also work together and we learn together about the waste management problem, issues in recycling.
Thank you, Suzanne. I think it's heating up a bit now. You can see that you're a bit emotional there, trying to explain to us what your views are on this issue, and the youths are always passionate about things that they believe in. So thank you for that. On a regional level, Ambassador, thank you. I would like to get your views, the audience would like to get your views on the need for activism in this space as well.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would also, first of all, like to extend and acknowledge our sincere appreciation to His Excellency, the Ambassador, for giving us this space and to discuss this very important topic. I suppose the operational word in this first segment is active participation. It's been raised how there's a lot that needed to be done. The youths need help. We need engagement. We need people with hands and legs and containers to do the action on the ground. And I suppose we can all agree that our lifestyle generates an incredible amount of waste because of our obsession with packaging that is driven by branding, style, and marketing. Kavnil have raised an important issue of addressing the issue at the consumer end. But we should not forget that at the production front too, there's a lot of obsession on selling products. Just take, for example, an iPhone, that sleek product that you hold in your hand. When you first buy it, like 80%, I suppose, of the whole package is just packaging, And that is like the definition of our consumer society today. And yes, we are addressing the consumer end today, the need to recycle, to make use of the packaging that comes our way, but it is important. If we are serious about active participation, we should also address this issue at the production end. And I think, and I say this having studied for 4 years in Japan, that is a society that is a model of recycling, I suppose, in the world. And why is that so? Because it is ingrained in their cultural DNA. It is taught in school. Children are taught on the importance of cleanliness, of taking advantage, of taking care of the environment, of taking care not to pollute other people's environment. And that is something I suppose we in the Pacific have probably been an oversight in our educational program. And also, currently, there is, and this is something we have discussed with Mr. Deo in our camp to bring some sanity into this recycling bottleneck that we continue to face as we try to progress this issue of waste management and recycling. The disconnect between the policy, the views of our leaders in the Pacific, if you hear what our leaders are talking about, they are clear about the utopia that they want us to live in, of where they want us to go to. But the roadmap to reach our destination is the biggest challenge that is facing us. And why is that? The roadmap are the policies, the legislations, will of communities and society to engage actively in this space. And I'm thankful that we are having these discussions, but we need to address the key issues that are obstructing us to be active participants in this space. Yes, we are thankful that the youths, the students are picking up the mantle because they will inherit this world that we have trashed. And it is important that they are aware of the huge challenge that they will be facing when they receive the baton of leadership in society and in communities. And I can empathize with the struggles that the youth activists are having today, because they are the ones who are aware of the importance of the environment that are being destroyed by our consumer behavior. And yet, when they see adults and leaders paying lip service to this issue of waste management and recycling, I'm sure that we will all be dismayed and disappointed. But I think, we've heard so much about this being only the one planet we are going to live in. And I think it is a moral obligation to ensure that at least when we give it to the next generation, they will have a chance of cleaning it up by doing what is right.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. I think you still have a lot to say there. We'll digress on that a little bit and we'll head on to segment 2. But before that, Amitesh, the floor is yours on your views on the need for activism/active participation in the recycling waste management space.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for that. So just as a matter of introduction, very quickly, Waste Recyclers Fiji Limited is a company that has been around in space and operating for over 28 years. And we represent Waste Recyclers Fiji Limited as well as Pacific Recycling Foundation, which is a relatively new foundation formed recently. It's a rights-based organization to support individuals who are engaged in informal waste picking as well as activism work around recycling. Now, coming back to the question of activism in recycling or active participation in recycling. So, because we've been around for 28 years, whenever we talk about our history or whenever we introduce ourselves, one of the commonly asked questions is why after 28 years there is such little advancement in recycling space in Fiji and in Pacific, in the region as well. Why don't we have recycling facilities, upcycling facilities? And every time I get asked that question, my staff know, it's very frustrating because my immediate response usually is, how much have you participated in recycling? How much recycling have you brought to a recycling station to contribute to that? Because without that participation, it becomes very difficult for recycling to be sustained. In a country like ours where we have less than 1 million people, volume is a huge issue when it comes to sustaining recycling concepts. So when we talk about recycling generally and why facilities are still at a very early stages, or why we are still collecting and not processing recyclables here, but shipping it out to other countries, one of the core reasons for that is because of the lack of participation from different agencies, from stakeholders, from people generally, and that's been an issue. So yeah, that would be one of the struggles that we say that we face as well in the activism space for recycling. The other element is about the lack of understanding that surrounds this issue. So when we say active participation, we mean not to take your bag of rubbish to a recycling station and throw it at their end. There needs to be clear understanding about the sorting process, about what is recyclable and what is actually rubbish, and the desire to understand that. That is what active participation for us also means. I'm very glad that Ambassador Lara has pointed out the need for corporate organizations, business houses to be involved. And there is usually in activism space where we are concerned as activists, there is a real pushback sometimes from large corporate organizations to be part of this space. So active participation from them is equally important. The need to understand different individuals or people who are involved. As Paula has said, the collection pillars of recycling, people who were formerly known as informal waste pickers, their struggle. That is active participation. How many of us actually understand these individuals and their lives? And also the gimmick that surrounds recycling. That is not very well understood also, that there is a strong element of that. So it's not all black and white. There are gray areas, and we need to understand and address that. And without participation from different stakeholders, that becomes really difficult. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Amitesh. I think we're getting heated up right now. Let's push it up a notch. But firstly, before we move on to the second segment, recycling, it's a secular concept. It starts from somewhere and then it goes on and on. But along that circular chain, there's different components to it. And I'm glad that the panelists today are very much involved in some of those components, from the collection to the exploitation, to the recycling process, once again to the manufacturing, come back to the end users, how we innovate with respect to how we use the recyclables of the original products. So that is, it's a really a broad topic, recycling. It's not a process in isolation. So that leads me to the second segment. And Amitesh, I'm asked to start off with you on this one again. The struggles faced in your area of work. I know that you've alluded to some of this in your first answers. And the pushbacks faced from the different sectors, the difficulties faced by different communities that you've worked with in this recycling space, particularly in the area that you work in. Please keep it to 4-5 minutes, please.
Did I exceed that? Did I exceed earlier?
I think so.
Sorry about that. So yeah, where the issues are concerned, I just on the onset, I just want to say there are a lot of issues, and we will not be able to cover all of them. Some of the issues that I would like to highlight here is not, Fiji is not unique to it. It's a global issue. It's regionally faced. So nobody to sort of take exception to that. So one of the key issues that we face as recycling activists and the space in which we operate is the struggles of those individuals who are engaging in informal waste picking. And if I can quickly touch on that. So Fiji, as well as many parts of the world, we have very active involvement of individuals who are engaging in informal waste picking. The world calls them informal waste pickers. And there are reasons why we had to come up or address them differently. One of the key issues that we face and they face is the lack of recognition for their work and the lack of recognition of their work as a trade, which is a huge problem, because the work they do in a country like Fiji, but any developing country, is very relevant, because we don't have enough resources, municipal councils don't have enough resources, private companies don't have enough resources to collect all recyclables that is there. And these individuals provide that networking of collection of recyclables. So very relevant work they do. But besides the lack of recognition for the trade, there is also a very strong element of stigma that is attached to their work. Name calling, and the likes of that. A very quick example, a very quick story of a real story of an informal waste picker or individual involved in informal waste picking shared with us during a workshop is her going to a doctor's clinic, a government doctor's clinic, and writing on a form that her trade is informal waste picking. And the assistant goes with a form inside the doctor's cubicle, comes back and asks her in front of everybody, has she had a shower before she came to the clinic? Because the doctor didn't want his cubicle to start smelling of garbage. So that itself is a stigma attached just by that. So the lack of understanding from professionals to everybody around, the classification that all waste pickers are mentally challenged individuals is a struggle. We were very fortunate, and I acknowledge IUCN for that, and Fiji Women's Crisis Center, that this year we held a workshop with 16 women who are part of informal waste picking around Fiji. And the workshop was about gender, human rights, legal literacy, and financial literacy. One of the key elements that came very apparent during that workshop was that the stigma that they face, and when they spoke about it, there was also that link that the name informal waste picker was actually contributing to the stigma. So what Paula mentioned at the very beginning, the collection pillars of recycling, the CPR, was actually a situation that, or an understanding from that workshop that we drew, that because of that name, these groups were actually subjected to further stigma. So after that workshop, we had a smaller workshop, a shorter workshop, where these 16 women then came up with a name that they wanted, that they thought brought dignity to their trade, that they wanted them to be referred to. So that's how the name Collection Pillars of Recycling was selected. Fiji was also the first place globally which brought recognition to this group, and also the first place globally where this group is now called Collection Pillars of Recycling. So yeah, that's one of the issues, struggles we face. The other one, if I can mention very quickly, is that recycling is also not very fashionable or sexy, as many other trade, many other activism forms. We get told very regularly that the discussion around recycling needs to be made more sexier, more vibrant, because it's very boring, and all of those things. So the key challenge is how do we make our message sexier? So we're still trying to figure that one out.
Good luck on that, Amitesh. Thank you. Hefuhelava, over to you. Now, I know that you're heading the Rock Ambassadors in school, and I'm sure that you've had some setbacks and pushbacks in your role as a Rock Ambassador. We would like you to just talk a little bit about that. What are the struggles that you're facing leading this initiative in Jai Narayan College?
A few setbacks that we had faced, beginning with the Recycle Go movement, would be working out. Would be firstly the name calling. When we started off as RG members, everybody looked at us as very peculiar, and they were curious as to see what we would do. And to see us get bashed on stage, they were like, oh, it's cool. These people are prefects. But then when we started carrying out our work, which was checking to see if all the bins in the classroom had been in the proper order, and going to sort out the different waste from the recycling hub that we had at our school, it had created a lot of misunderstanding, and students started to label we, the RG ambassadors, as rubbish pickers. And then on my first day of the job, early in the morning at 6:30, I get called, oh, here comes the mother of the rubbish pickers. That was a setback because it was very demoralizing for us, especially if most of us had taken the initiative. And this was something that we had a lot of interest to take in, and to see other students not sharing the same passion as us for recycling on the go, it made us feel rather strange. And the work that we were carrying out wasn't appreciated. Secondly, would be the projects that we come up with in schools. The feedback that we get from the management is very much, they take a timely response. It's a very slow response to the project, as if no one cares about what we're doing. A project that we're trying to carry out in school would be the notice boards, where we're trying to educate everyone in our school what we do as Recycling on the Go ambassadors. We're not just rubbish pickers. We're trying to get the message out there in the fact that it's not just rubbish, it's waste, and we can make useful and valuable things out of these. Another one would be there's no interest shown from our teachers and the students. When we talk about and we go and try to address this whole recycling on the go, that people, please keep your bins in check, please keep the conditions of your bins and all, the response that we get is very not so good. People are aggressive, they tend to tear up their bins, and when they see us with our badges walking around, they tend to throw around those waste bins. All in all, however, as we have gone through the year as Recycling on the Go ambassadors, it was definitely a learning curve for us, and it pushed us to do more on our end and try to get our message through to the other students. Thank you.
Thank you, Hefuhelava. We have so much to learn from you. Whatever the challenges that you're facing in school, it could be replicated, to other aspects, spaces of doing this work. But yes, it's specific to the school and the environment that you are trying to lead this work in, and we thank you for highlighting those challenges that you face. Kavnil, over to you. A few words on the struggles that you face in work with respect to recycling.
Thanks, Paula. Of course, I come from a regulator. As a regulator, the Department of Environment's position is such, and we are the regulators. So our challenges are pretty different from what we have had and what you would expect to hear from me. But of course, any organization, anywhere you go, of course there are challenges, and one of those challenges that we at the department face is, of course, we at MISTA, we have three acts: the Environment Management Act, we have the LETA Act, and then we have the Endangered and Protected Species Act. Then we have the two regulations: the Environment Management Waste Disposal and Recycling Regulations, and then the Environment Impact Assessment Process Regulations. So total of 5 there. So we administer these regulations, we are the enforcers of these regulations, and one of those challenges that comes out of it is the non-compliance to these regulations, and from the facilities. By law, all commercial and industrial facilities in Fiji are required to have from the Department of Environment to operating commercially in an industrial facility. And these are the waste permits, and we have different categories of waste permits. We have the disposal permit, we have the recycling permits, we have the waste transport permit, and these permits go out with conditions and these facilities need to comply with. So this is of course the obvious challenge that we have, that is the non-compliance to these conditions and directly non-compliance to the regulations and laws that we have in the country. However, there are some of these facilities that are not compliant, but in general, when you talk in totality, most of the facilities are compliant. And when we come across situations where companies, facilities are non-compliant, we take a legislative approach, what's in the legislation, what's in the regulation, and through that approach, we issue notices. Usually it's a non-compliance notice, and that is given out to these facilities to comply with the requirements or the part of the permit that they are breaching. And what this does is actually gets them sort of a reminder that they are non-compliant. And of course there are provisions within the regulations. It's a very powerful act, I would say, the Environment Management Act, that the penalties are quite high, the legal implications are quite harsh, I should say. But and we have we exercised those powers in in our getting out of it and in our processes. But like I said, once we find out the facilities are not compliant, we give out non-compliance notices. And what we found in general is these companies that are non-compliant are very cooperative as well. So once a non-compliance notice is given, they cooperate, they do everything that's needful from their end to become compliant or whatever is lacking, to up the notch and aggressive, become compliant. So then, of course, that's the challenge we face, and this is how we actually go about dealing with that obvious challenge that we have at the Department of Environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavnil, for exactly to share a bit on the struggles that you face within the government context. Over to you, Suzanne. As a youth, I know that you alluded to some of the struggles that you face, but a little bit more specific on the pushbacks that you're facing with respect to your work in this space within the youth group.
Thank you. Just to add on about some of the pushbacks that we have is, so I'll just give a background. Our group, the Pacific Ocean Little Youth Project, we're comprised of staff and students based at USP Lower Campus. So we clean up the foreshore every week, twice a day, Mondays and Fridays. And I guess some of the challenges we have is getting more people to come and join us, and getting more support from the community at Lower Campus, because our group is primarily marine science and environmental students. I guess for us, these marine environmental students, is we know the impacts of the littering, of the rubbish on our coastlines, and we know why we're doing the cleanup. We know how beneficial that work is, and it's just a bit about what Helen had mentioned, the interest from the other students on campus, and I guess reaching more students at upper campus, and hopefully the bigger community across outside of campus, getting that interest. Like we maybe the only few that know the impacts. These other students who are not aware of the impacts of this litter on the beach in the bins. And give another example about some of the challenges is we set up a bin for our plastic bottles. And so you set up the bin for plastic recyclables, and then we have another bin that's there for the general waste. And you just see students dumping their bottles in the general waste, putting the stuff in the recyclable bag. And so that goes back to behavior and actual interest and knowing what to do with. I mean, it's already labeled, right? You put it in the right bin, right? And so that's one of the other challenges. Another thing that comes to mind that we face being a youth activist group is finding the proper funding. And we're doing this work voluntarily. We're not getting paid and stuff, but finding the time to actually write up proposals and look for funding for the work that we are doing, and the support in itself, the financial support in itself is a bit of a negative for us. Yeah? But we're not really driven by the money. It's the passion in the work that we're doing. We know why we're doing it. We know the impacts. We know the benefits, as I had already mentioned. The passion is there. We just want everyone else to be as passionate about the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. That is quite right. I think there is a need to spread that passion to everyone around us, and to be able to have that collective effort from everyone towards what we are trying to achieve here. Mr. Solomon, at the regional level, if there is any issues as well, setbacks, especially I'm trying to get that regional collective effort towards pushing this agenda forward, especially around recycling and waste management.
Thank you for the question, Paula. before, although we have a regional focus, we tend to work with communities at the national level. We try to bring down the sustainable development programs and introduce it at community levels with the support of the private sector and civil society. And one of the main challenge or pushback we have found during our community engagement is in this space of waste management and recycling is the lack of awareness of the connectivity of waste management, recycling to other aspects of sustainable development, like conservation in the ocean, or how it affects our food source, for example. When you talk to people who are pushing back against waste management and recycling, they tend to focus primarily on that one activity of recycling. But if you package these discussions and this talanoa on recycling and waste management as a holistic approach to sustainable development that can safeguard food source, that can contribute positively to conservation, that can help in building island resilience, then a light bulb moment, is struck within the communities and with people's lives. And I think that is an important lesson for us to take forward in our engagement, particularly in schools and amongst the youth. And most particularly on island nations like ours. As islands, we do not have the luxury of space to collect our rubbish. Even if we recycle 100%, rubbish is still coming in, in packaging and so on. So I suppose this awareness program that we need to, if there is to be an active participation in this place, we need to create more awareness, I suppose, within communities, within schools, the use of faith-based organizations who are quite powerful in their advocacy platform. We need to get as many partners and actors into this space. It's good that we are starting with schools because they are the ones who are going to continue and make this activity sustainable in the future. But I think there are other partners out there that are working in silos that may have, powerful source platforms that can reach the community.
Thank you, Mr. Soma. That was really enlightening, speaking from the regional context. Now we are on to segment 3 and 4. 2 segments are done. I think we are good with timing. Now let's start again. Now this time with you. The question here is innovative ideas, concepts in the pipeline to growth, enhance, complement their work. I would like to narrow it down for you at school as a leader, as the leader of the Roundtable Masters program. What are some of the things that you are thinking of in order to improve the initiative at Jai Narayan College? What are some of the solutions, the challenges that you just alluded to? What are some of the things that you wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and you start to think about?
In regards to initiatives that we, the ROG, wish to take part of, I just want to say that we have so much ideas that we do want to carry out. However, we have to get approval from our principal. So regardless if we have all these great ideas, we can't really just push it forward without permission. However, the ideas that we have put forward and have yet to get permission would be our notice board. We wanted this to be the centerpiece of our school, whereby people, students going past, they can take time out of their day during lunch or when they come to visit our school and come and learn about the Recycling on the Go movement, what we do, our vision, our mission, and all aspects of what we do to carry out the proper waste disposal in our school. Our second concept or idea that we wanted to carry out would be a school cleanup campaign. This was recently inspired from the coastal cleanup campaign that we had carried out. So the program would be like an extracurricular activity, or you can say an extra period, whereby students would engage in to clean up the school surroundings, as well as practice waste management, now with the recycling hub that we have at our school. This will give students a little picture of what we do as Recycling on the Go ambassadors, and it'll be like an allocated period of time of about 45 minutes. Our last one would be recycling incentives, awards, and financial support. So with a lot of recycling bins that we have getting damaged and the students not really following the Recycling on the Go vision, we decided that we wanted to have incentives for students in each form, whereby the form with the most organized waste disposal would be rewarded for the week. So yeah, so far that's all the plans in the pipeline that we have.
Thank you, Hello. I hope you all heard that. Incentives, incentives, incentives. You'll need a lot of funding for those incentives. Kavnil, over to you. Some innovation concepts in the pipeline for growth in this space that you can share with us today.
Thanks, Paula. Before we go into what's in the pipeline, I think I'll discuss a few things that is already there, for the stakeholders, for the facilities, and for the companies and the operating commission. One of those, a very recent one that we launched was during the Global Recycling Day, and that was the 7R policy on waste management that we had. And this was a add-on to the initial policy that we had on the 3R for waste management. So we have, we looked at the waste hierarchy and, brought in this policy as sort of a clear guideline of, what needs to be done and, what's expected, from in terms of waste management and how the waste hierarchy, picture when we talk about waste management. So that was one that we did during the Global Recycling Day. The other one that was also part of the Global Recycling Day event was the Zero Waste Ambition, and Waste Recyclers Fiji is one of the members of that, where we invite or we identify these businesses that come on board and take a pledge that they will set up initiatives within their organization to reduce or better manage their waste and take steps within the next 3 years, in terms of better managing their waste. And one of those steps, for example, was that 90% of their waste will either be recycled or deposited at a recycling facility and properly receipted. So that was the other initiative that the department came up with, and I think currently we have 5 different facilities, organizations that are part of this initiative, and we're of course looking forward to expanding that. The other one is the Gold Card membership that we have at the Department of Environment, where we have facilities that are compliant or have had zero issues or non-compliances in the past, and we have identified them, and we are given these Gold Card membership service, whereby they are given the green lane processing timelines with their applications, and so when they are through this program, we aim to expedite and reward businesses and individuals who have a track record of sustainable environment practices and so forth. So that's the other initiative that we have at the Department of Environment. That's the Gold Card membership that we have. The other one is, of course, the permitting system. It's been there for a while, but with these permitting systems and especially with those that manufacture or import plastic bottles and all, we have had this part of the permit is the recovery rates that we have included. So all those manufacturers or producers of plastic bottles, they have a certain degree of responsibility in terms of what we call recovery rates for the plastic bottles. So during the first year of their permit, they are required to reach 75% of recovery rate, and then following it 85% recovery rate, and into the third year it's the 95% recovery rate. So that's part of our permitting system. So these are some of the things that's already there. and we're looking into expanding into it. We want to get more businesses on board, especially into the zero waste ambition initiative, the gold card membership, but this is purely based on compliance, how compliant you are to the conditions, and generally how sustainably, environmentally sustainably, you are running your operations. So that's that. And what's in the pipeline, I'll just quickly end it. There is the container deposit legislation and the regulations that we have, and there's already work going on, and we're into the final stages of finalizing the documents to get the consultants on board and begin work in coming up with a regulation, with the container deposit regulation. I mean, there's so many similar regulations all over the world, around 40 different container deposit schemes that exist. But each of it is unique in the sense of its setting, and in terms of the society, in terms of the people, the behavior, and the availability of services, and all those things come into play. And that is why we need to identify and do this background work, to find the right people to do work. I'm glad to say that we are into the final stages to get the consultants on board and start this work in developing the container deposit regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavnil. That gold card thing sounds interesting, isn't it? Like a credit card? Not really. Okay. Amitesh, over to you. I know you're raring to go on this. Some innovative ideas and concepts in the pipeline. Not only with WRFL, but with the Pacific Recycling Foundation as well.
Thank you. So the work we do on the Pacific Recycling Foundation is really hinged on movement building. So most of it is around activism work, around how to get people actively involved in the space of recycling and waste management, and how to improve recycling rates. One of the programs that we are actively involved and which we launched during our Global Recycling Day 2022, and the product that is sitting here with us was the Global the Recycling on the Go program, which is a program which we introduced at Jai Narayan College with a partnership with Suva Shipping. And that program is a very student-led program. It's about creating activists within a school space. 24 students from Jai Narayan College who receive training and guidance and support, and then take the recycling message to the 800, 900 students within the school. As you heard, the struggles within that and the challenges that they face is actually creating us a blueprint for us to then, if we're going to roll these programs out to other schools, the lessons learned, and how do we take it forward. So the idea is that next year, 2023 Global Recycling Day, we will launch a report on our findings and our project with the Jai Narayan school program, and then actively roll it out to other schools, including our all-girls school and a primary school are some of the things that's part of the ROG program. And very, very happy to see that activist approach amongst the ROG ambassadors, which is very encouraging for us. So we work with students, with schools, as well as women's groups engaged in waste picking, as well as communities and research work which is attached to science. So we've the other work that is in the pipeline is our work with CBRs and support structure that we are creating with them for them in providing them empowerment through Fiji, in Fiji and in the regional space. One of them is a mapping exercise that we are taking forward. We've got some guidance from organizations or a particular organization from India. So this mapping exercise is to profile, to map out individuals who are engaged in this space in Fiji, and then how do we provide support to them without creating a sense of dependency. What support structure can we create so that their work improves, and if their work improves, the collection system and the collection streams improve. We're also working with women's groups on some upcycling projects where we are experimenting, exploring, converting plastic into different products. For example, converting plastic into high-end coasters or building blocks, and several other projects that's been explored. There is also a community-based recycling program that IUCN, Department of Environment, Town Council, and RC Mumbai has partnered with us, and which we just had a community consultation process last week. And this pilot project is supposed to be officially launched in mid-October, and it's very much how the ROC program is. It's led and owned by the community, and the idea is that we want them to take that step forward and become recycling activists, so that they could take that recycling message within the community and how they influence the changes in that space within that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Amitesh. There's so many things happening, don't you agree? From Kavnil, Helava, and to you as well on the community consultations with respect to recycling. And I will ask Suzanne now. Suzanne, you are involved in a very innovative idea that you've just alluded to. But can you speak a little bit more about that and what is in the pipeline with respect to the work that you're doing at USP, the creative aspect of it, and the others that you wish to share with us?
Thank you. So a part of what we also do with the Pacific Ocean Litter Youth Project is we upcycle marine debris into art. And so the select items that we find off the beach, we collect them, wash them, clean them, and do them together and make beauty. As Helava said, trash. One man's trash is another man's treasure. So the idea behind that is that you have the science and the arts merged. So we are speaking to the science language and also the creative expression, and in the sense that not everyone can understand the science, and people, I guess, would be more inclined as well to the creative side, where they see the rubbish that's turned into something beautiful, and will think about, oh, this is found on the beach. Yes, this is found on the beach, and then they think about where it comes from and why, how come it's coming onto the beach. And we'll also, as Helava had also mentioned, they were part of the International Coastal Cleanup Day that was on the 17th of September, where we had the cleanup and also the marine debris art activity, where we had the young people, the kids and the adults as well, coming in to just be free with the rubbish and make something new. And so we try to create awareness in a different way, where you are looking at things in a different eye, in a different lens, and just to address, don't look at it as a problem. You know? There is a solution to that. You have a better way of upcycling these things that you consider rubbish and make something new. And a few other things we have in the pipeline would be to have an art exhibition of these marine upcycled art, and as well as with financial support, some sculptures, bigger art pieces that will hopefully be out to be displayed in the public future. But that's something that we're trying to change with, is we're using science and art to talk about, to raise awareness about the issue, and to also address it in the same path. Thank you.
We really need to try that out. It sounds so mysterious. Yes, but I think we really, if you agree with me, I think we really need to all try that out. Trying to create something out of, what would you call it, Suzanne? Debris, something out of debris. Thank you, Suzanne, for that. We're very enlightening indeed. Mr. Solomon, with all that is happening at the national level, Is there anything that you have to offer, innovation, especially on supporting some of these activities that are happening, probably in isolation, I would say, but at the regional level, with that overview that you have? Please.
Thank you, Paula. Maybe just to comment on what Suzanne was trying to say about, like building huge art in public spaces. When we attended the Oceans Conference in Lisbon, it was amazing to see like plastic bottles, debris being turned into huge art pieces that are displayed in the middle of the road or around the convention center. And I suppose, like if we search that online, we can get incentives and ideas from things that have been done before. And that brings me to my response to the question that has been posed. It's not so much from us an innovation of new ideas, more on the repackaging and recycling of ideas that have proven useful in the past in other sectors. And that is the program we are pushing with our member states on encouraging member states to develop economic models around waste management and recycling. And what I mean by that is the active participation of the private sector in this space. For it to be sustainable in the long term, we need to bring in the private sector to participate in recycling so that it can generate a kind of incentives that we are talking about here. And government has a much bigger role to play in this program. And that is by giving, like generous tax incentives to companies that are involved in this space. Encourage more active participation of the private sector in the way that has been shared by the Fijian government in terms of giving gold cards to those who are adhering to the regulatory framework. But I think we need to go further in getting other sectors and other private sector players in this space to be more proactive by, in budgetary processes, consider giving tax concessions and tax incentives to companies that are more ambitious in terms of what they bring to the table in the area of recycling and waste management, and how they program that into their plan of action, either at regional or national level. But I must say that one of the work that we are trying to partner with the private sector is in schools, because I believe that we all agree that we need to invest in students, in the youth, to take on this noble task into the future. And one of which is to see how we can get the private sector to fund this nicely. I returned from Bangkok with these ideas and pictures of how in schools and public spaces, how they put out separation bins that are clearly marked and labeled, and on a wall beside it, it educates the public on where this trash is going and what it will be used for. And I think that is important. It's not just like trying to encourage behavior by, rote kind of word, but also explaining to communities and individuals where that rubbish is going to, what it will be used for, and the benefits to the community it will generate. And I think that is probably an idea that we are trying to borrow from other countries in the region to see how we can help mainstream recycling and waste management practices.
Thank you, Mr. Solnar. Thank you so much for that. Now we're on to the last segment, ladies and gentlemen. I think we exactly have 20 minutes to work with. Kavnil, I will end with you on this. But I will start from Amitesh, then we'll go around the circle. The question is, the last one, is the importance of policy alignment and networking to take things forward. What is needed? Key message to public and artists, please.
So, policies play a critical role, and I actually acknowledge Department of Environment for the work they do in that space. Every time we've had meetings and discussions with the director or the permanent secretary or the minister, they have taken things on board, and that has to be acknowledged. The container deposit legislation that we're talking about, that Kavnil mentioned there, is a critical component that is going to actually help a lot in terms of collection of containers, of plastic containers, as well as plastic bottles generally. But in terms of policy, the aspect that I would like to just touch on is policy at organizational level, and making sure that companies, business houses, any organization or any agency, when you are putting a policy in place, that firstly, waste management and recycling are two different aspects, and what we find generally is that gets confused. People, for example, when we have a tender process, companies call for tender. There's just one tender process, and that will be for waste disposal. There is no distinction, no separation of recycling from waste disposal. So what that has caused is companies who are actually waste picking companies, whose role is to provide skip bin and then take the skip bin to landfill, have now begun to identify themselves as recycling companies. And what happens, and there's a typical example on a large resort on Dandenong Island, where they have this beautiful setup of recycling being sorted. They have a staff allocated for sorting to take place and all of those things. And what happens every afternoon? A truck pulls in, loads all of that, and takes it straight to the dump site. And it just defeats the whole purpose of recycling. So it's about, not just about policy, it's about the checks and balances on implementation of those policies that needs to be addressed. Policies at organizational level, as well as the policies obviously at national level. So yeah, there is that important aspect of that. Yeah, and in terms of networking around key stakeholders, here we have around the table all of the individuals that we've worked at different projects. So that networking, including the moderator, is very, very important for us to establish, because alone we can't take the work forward.
Thank you, Amitesh. Mr. Solomon, let me put you on the spot a little bit here. So let's jump from regional to global level. We'll talk about policy alignment at the national level soon with the rest of the panelists, but can you kindly share with us what are your views at the global level, alignment with the global treaties being advocated for, and how is that impactful with respect to the space that we're talking about today? What is needed from the national level, the regional level as well?
Thank you, Paul, for the question and the focus on the commitments at the global level. I'm sure we've all been following up on conventions, whether it's been on climate change or conservation. It is quite clear at the global level, leaders are committed to a healthy planet, to a healthy population, and they are, like the vision that is captured at the international and global level is one of utopia. There will be less waste, Yes, they've recognized, the leaders have recognized the huge challenge that exists. our waste we create and how that impedes life on this planet. Not only for the human species, but for every species on this earth. And it is contributing to the loss of biodiversity all around the world. That is the starting point from which the leaders are coming from, and they have committed to the processes and programs that will take us to a world that is healthy, protected. But the main challenge, I suppose, is in the implementation. When they take that at the national level and how they transform those commitments into policies and legislation at the national level that can come up, that will turn countries into like healthy environments. And I think the challenge here is how we connect those global visions, the commitments at the national level, to implementation plan on the ground. And this is where the huge disconnect exists. And I think everyone who's active in this space can agree that when you go down to the grassroots level, there is like a huge missing piece in this puzzle. And I totally believe, and I'm adamant that if we can address the policy gaps, reform our legislations, address the archaic policy that exists at the national level, and be more progressive in terms of how we can address the bottlenecks that exist, we can achieve something that is worth giving to our children in the next generation.
Thank you. Really, those are aspirations that are really needed in these times, Mr. Solomon. Thank you so much for that. Suzanne, youths are well known not to be policy aligned most times, but in this case, would you like to share with us how the policies at this national level with the government, how that is impacting your work? How are you aligning with the policies there is, and how are you complementing the policies that there are with respect to the work that you do?
Okay. So in terms of the policy alignment, which is the youth activists, I think that youths must actually know the policies that are in place in terms of waste management. And from there, as Amitesh and Mr. Solomon had mentioned, look at the gaps. I mean, he had mentioned a few things that are way up there. And he was also talking about grassroots things. And I'm thinking about in terms of consultation and youth inclusiveness in these consultations as well. And areas where they can take leadership roles and in terms of participation as well. Not only youth, but also the LGBTQIA communities and the disabled community as well. We must have a voice in these policies, and I guess what is also needed in terms of networking and coordination is the different youth groups as well. We must connect with each other first and work together on the ground or at the different levels and help the levels above us. That's how we can support you and support the government, and also inspire the upcoming generations in our fight or our work for a cleaner environment, for a cleaner Pacific. Thank you.
Really inspiring remarks coming up now in the last segment of our discussions. However, policies and rules may sound the same to you as far as your work is concerned at Jai Narayan College. Would you consider a change of rules at Jai Narayan to accommodate for the vision of the work that the ROG investors are doing, and what are the things you probably think that is already existing that is okay, but if there are changes that you think that should be done within school, not only in Jai Narayan but in other schools, would you like to share with us on that?
In terms of policies, honestly speaking, we, the younger generation, we don't really know much about all these environmental legislation or acts. But speaking on a more school community level, in terms of our rules in school, the only rules that we have to follow is in regards to the labels on the rubbish bins that we have in terms of waste disposal. Changes that need to be made would be more adamant laws in terms of the teachers taking more action in putting these rules that they have. Can't speak much on policy because there aren't any rules that were put. It's more of a norm that you have to follow. So yeah, that's all I can say about it.
Thank you for that. At least we know that you understand a little bit of what policy alignment is with respect to this work. And now, over to you, Kavnil, the stewards of our policies with respect to waste management and recycling. Share with us some of the things that you are looking at as far as policy alignment, and probably some gaps that you may have identified with respect to policies in this space.
Like I said, in one of the earlier segments, the regulations that we have in place that are there, are quite forward-looking. They were not just drawn up, single day or without a consultation process or just pulled out of thin air. These went through a proper policy process and how a policy is drawn up. So within the policy, there is so much of that it is forward-looking, and in terms of the new challenges that are coming in these in terms of waste management and all, it has got a direction. It gives a direction of how this needs to be addressed. And like I mentioned, that we have these three different acts and the two regulations with the Department of Environment, and then of course the new. Whenever there is a need, or we identify that there is a certain gap, or something needs to change, we have made amendments to these regulations, and these are the amendments that have been brought into these regulations, as well as when we identify a gap, like the 7R policy was brought in to complement the work that was already happening in the 3R policy that was in place, and the 7R policy was brought in to give a further direction and complement the work that was being done with the 3R policy. And like I say, like Mr. Mara said, what happens at the treaty level, at that level, it trickles down, and then we identify where this fits in, where this amendment needs to come, where a new regulation is needed. So it's all the way from the top to the department, or to the government, and then to the department. And this is where these new amendments or new regulations are brought in. For example, the container deposit regulation that are work in progress. This was identified. That there is a need for such a regulation to address what would become what slowly is becoming a problematic waste area, the bottles and containers. So the problem identified. Then this approach taken, and again, like I said, it's the due process. You cannot just get it in a day or two, like that. So it takes the whole process. We get the consultants on board, they do the background, the research, and the groundwork, and then slowly it takes it into a form of a regulation. That's how it goes. So in general, like I said, it's the approach that's taken when we identify the need, then for a proper process, a regulation or policy comes into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavnil. I think that was a suiting end to our discussions this afternoon, ending off with the representative from government, from the Fijian government. Now, we are right on time for some questions from our audience. If there are any questions from our audience, for our expert panel that are seated here this afternoon.
Board of Naka, my name is Leslie. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for your presentation on a very interesting topic on waste and recycle management. This is my view from a disability sector as our youth with disabilities. What caught my attention was the first segment on active participation on group discussion. We shared about the different struggles on the second segment and innovation ideas. My question is I hear about Jai Narayan, that's on mainstream schools, on about waste recycling, and they also focus on the special schools for children with disabilities to understand about the importance of waste recycling, to make it also active or responsible citizens to participate in that, and also in innovation ideas. I really enjoyed what we shared. From my view, I think it's a suggestion or maybe a food for thought. If there can be also ideas where from the visual impaired, where they can just access waste management, where it's accessible for them instead of for them to take it freely, for the deaf to have signs, for those with wheelchair users, where they can actually just take themselves and participate in battling waste management.
Panelists, anyone would like to add on to that, comment?
Thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge that it's a very, very important aspect, and inclusiveness and all of that that we talk about. It's also a very evolving space for us. So what you just said there is actually is very enlightening for us to actually think about it. Now, when I said schools that we were going to take this forward, I said a all-girls school and a school, a primary school. But what you just suggested is actually something that we would really like to consider. So thank you so much for that. But also, we'd like to open engagement on understanding the space a bit better. Like I said, it's an evolving space for us. We are also learning on working with different communities and in that space. Having said that, the PRF Pacific Recycling Foundation is
Patricia Parkinson with the Environmental Law Oceania Consultancy. My question is about regional solutions. I know
where companies, individuals, activists who are involved in this space look up to us for guidance or advice when they're stuck trying to ship a particular recyclable out of a regional space. So there is definitely a part of our strategic planning is to work with regional partners. The mapping exercise that I spoke about with regard to CPR's culture and pillars of recycling that we're going to do in Fiji is something that we want to roll out in the second year phase to regional level as well. But besides that, the upcycling programs that we are involved in, working with Swire Shipping as well as Scrap, trying to create a network, because like I said earlier, volume is a huge problem when recyclables are concerned, and trying to get recyclables from other smaller Pacific Island countries, Fiji, that can be the hub of processing these recyclables, is part of the strategy. But it's sort of long-term goals, but a lot of relationship is already there, a lot of networking is there. The alliance is at this stage very informal, but and we want to keep the Pacific spirit of things alive as well. So some of it will remain informal, but we will also form some structure and put some formal structure to create a network of regional institute around that. Thank you.
Maybe I can just add to Mr. Deo's contribution to that question. Good question. I think in the area of waste management and recycling, this is a global objective, but we need to act locally. And in the Pacific Island region, it is important for us to also extend that to regional efforts. As island nations, we cannot just be active in this space in one or two islands, because the waste from the other islands, if they are not active, will undermine the efforts of the other islands in the group. So it is important to ensure that activists in other islands are on board in this effort, and that is one of the reasons why we are very pleased that Pacific Recycling Foundation has been formed to address this issue, and a few months back we signed an MOU to have that regional focus in this space.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a question from a lady in brown coat.
Boleh Benaka, Bola panelists. My question is actually for Ms. Suzanne. First off, I'd just like to commend you for the passionate work that Polyp has been doing over the years. If I just wanted to know if you had the latest stats on the amount of trash that has been collected on the beach clean-up campaign that you've been doing so far. Is the latest ones that you've done September 17th or just a whole year? Yeah, thank you.
Naka, thank you for the question. So for the litter that we collected on September 17th, we targeted 3 different areas. There was the USP foreshore, and then we had the Suva Point beach area, and then we also targeted that stretch of beach after Maritime School. So from the 3 zones, we collected about 650 kg of litter that was thankfully collected by the waste recyclers team. And so we've actually been active for the past, come November will be 1 year. And in the time that we've been collecting weekly at the USP foreshore, I'd say we have collected over 2 tons of rubbish just on that one beach. At one beach, over 2 tons of rubbish. And that's just on site. So we are hoping to eventually duplicate that same collection method other areas of Fiji. Just look at problematic plastics that are washing up, and that will hopefully inform policy and contribute to the waste management practices as well. So I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you for your good discussion. And this is Iwatani from Japan International Cooperation Agency. And in the context of recycling, lack of collaboration between local stakeholders from grassroots to government level will be a big problem, I know. But who is the key actor for the more effective collaboration between the local stakeholders?
If I rephrase the question or just emphasize it a bit, I think the question is about coordinating stakeholders that are working together in this space. Is that correct? Who is the key actor? Others probably has got a coordination role somehow in the middle of the mix. This space is becoming a bit crowded. That's the question, I believe. Panelists, please.
Well, I suppose we can break it down in terms of, in Fiji, the collection, waste management is the domain of municipal councils. And they are supposedly the main coordinator in the town boundaries. But I suppose outside of the town boundaries, there are local authorities that are in charge. Within the communities, coordinator would be, whether it is the Itoke Provincial Council or the provincial administration would be, that is from the government end. I think in the private sector would also be, civil society would also involve in that network in some way or form.
I think that covers it, but just from an activist point of view, I think we would always say that we're movement building, we're trying to get networking done and buy-ins from different stakeholders. It always hinges to individuals who call themselves activists even when we were debating different forums, there is a real desire to not be called activists because it has a negative view on it. So when we are saying that we are recycling activists, sometimes it's not taken very well. But the idea is that it's actually that activism work that allows a lot of discussion and networking around it to take place. So our answer will always be, well, there are different stakeholders who are taking that role on, but it's actually a lot of work that moves forward is through the work of activists. Thank you.
Any more questions?
There are no more questions from the audience. And I suppose that concludes our roundtable discussion for this afternoon. And once again, let me thank the French Embassy, Your Excellency, for availing this space for us to actually discuss this issue, as well as our sponsors, Bread Bank, the Government of New Caledonia, I suppose, and the Pacific Recycling Foundation, for partnering with us to support these discussions. And I think the audience is satisfied that there's probably some very important key discussions that has happened here this afternoon. With those few words, I would like to extend also an invitation again to the Excellency if you would like to close up a few remarks before we end this afternoon.
Thank you so much. So, really, it was a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for each roundtable we are organizing here. It encourages us to create, to give the space for people to gather and talk about these very important issues. So what I would like to share with you, I would like to share a few comments about this discussion. I would like especially to emphasize the economic aspect of recycling. I think this is very important. And I will give just a few examples of it. I was ambassador to Nepal before coming here, and there you have informal waste workers. For all the life is all the income come from waste picking in the city and working in the big dump field outside of Kathmandu. And for these people, they sacrifice their life to get some cash income and to pay especially the school fees for their children. So I think that in any discussion about recycling and how we should perhaps formalize the waste sector, we should take into consideration the fragility and the importance of these informal waste workers. And the second example is, in fact, I think for any recycling consideration, we should have in mind that it needs some critical mass. And especially if you recycle some products, some goods, you need to find a market for it. And for example, if you take insular countries like Fiji, perhaps it's not so easy to find some markets for recycled goods. For example, if Fiji car markets generates 1,000 used car a month, if you recycle here all these 1,000 cars, obviously there's no market for all these spare parts and all materials coming from these cars, so you have to export it somewhere. My third example would be about the Green Embassy project. So in fact, in 2015, I was in charge of initiating this project in Paris. And at that time when we talked about it, to whom we should talk in the embassies to mobilize them, to try to motivate them to be part of this Green Embassy project, we decided to talk to the head of administration and not to the ambassadors. The reason is the head of administration is in charge of the, let's say, facility management. So he knows the embassy from a technical point of view. And also he's the one who will pay most importance to the financial aspect. So we try to motivate them by explaining that they can have a lot of financial gain They can save a lot of money if they accept to be part of this green embassy project. They can cut by half, for example, paper consumption. They can reduce very significantly water consumption, electricity consumption, gasoline consumption, and with very short-term effect, it means from one fiscal year to the other, you can really have a very significant gain. So this is a third example I wanted to share about the importance of economy in recycling. So that's all for this. Thank you so much for being part of this roundtable and for organizing it. IUCN is obviously a partner of AFD, or KY initiative. And so I thank you so much for being the moderator and all the panelists for accepting this to be part of this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And now I invite the audience, please let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you very much. And thank you also as well for being attentive this afternoon. Applause as well as for you. Applause for you as well.
Thank you very much. So this roundtable discussion will be followed by a little cocktail. So if you want to go outside on the deck, it will take place in 15 minutes. So please, you are all welcome to this cocktail. Thank you very much.